Tomorrow's US presidential election is on track to have the highest voter turnout in more than a century, reflecting obviously the high stakes in the race between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. The US Elections Project says more than 93 million people had voted by Sunday, and there are predictions that up to 150 million Americans out of 239 million eligible voters will cast their ballots. Overnight, a wobble for the Democratic campaign after a poll in Iowa showed that Trump was leading by 7 points. I want to go live now to Washington, D.C. and correspondent Simon Marks. 24 hours to go. Simon, good evening to you, South African time. And this extraordinary statement attributed to Trump that he might declare victory early if he gets close to the 270 Electoral College votes.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump, Jeremy, in the closing days of this election campaign has been absolutely insistent that the American public must know the outcome of this election on election night or in the very early hours of Wednesday morning. Not for him a long wait to find out exactly how people voted. He is intent on trying to get this over and done with as quickly as possible, and possibly intent on making an announcement that he has won the election from the White House on Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning here, even though there will still be many, many votes left to count. And in some of those battleground states like Florida, Pennsylvania, where the candidates have been going head-to-head, the polling suggests that the finish is going to be a knife edge, razor-thin margins separating the two candidates, in particularly those two all-important battleground states. If it came down to either Florida or Pennsylvania, clearly you'd need to spend several days counting postal votes, and President Trump is pouring scorn on that, saying that it's an outrage that the Supreme Court has said that all the postal votes need to be counted. He acts as though someone casting a vote in this election by mail is somehow a lesser citizen than people who are queuing up at the polling stations in person. So far, the courts have not sided with him on that, but he's got an army of lawyers. Joe Biden has an army of lawyers, and I think while we don't know who's won the election yet, we know that the lawyers are definitely going to be able to celebrate victory.
And Simon, getting uglier and uglier at the weekend, we had the so-called Trump train, which ambushed a Biden-Harris bus.
Yeah, absolutely. That was on Interstate Highway 35 down in Texas as a Biden campaign bus was making its way from Austin to the city of San Antonio to hold campaign events there. It was surrounded by pickup trucks, drivers bearing Trump banners and U.S. flags. It started out looking like a joke. They wanted to be seen to be kind of escorting the Biden campaign volunteers out of the state. But then one of those Trump pickup cars tried to drive a Biden car off the road, smashing into it. The FBI is investigating. President Trump says the FBI shouldn't be investigating. These were just well-meaning patriots, he says. And indeed, his own son, Donald Trump Jr., went onto Facebook to urge similar confrontations with Biden-Harris volunteers in other parts of the country. Very, very ugly scenes. And these are scenes, Jeremy, we do not usually associate with American democracy. Here in Washington, in New York, all the businesses, all the offices in the central business district, all boarded up amid fears of possible violence here in the days ahead. This does not feel like a regular American presidential election or a celebration of democracy.
Simon, just in conclusion, you live in D.C., you know South Africa well. Apart from the slights and the rhetoric that we've heard from Donald Trump over the past 4 years, that relationship between Washington and Pretoria, I would suggest, has remained remarkably unchanged under Donald Trump. He hasn't, for instance, carried out threats to slash funds. Would it be more of the same if Trump stays in the White House?
More of the same if Trump stays in the White House, in the sense, Jeremy, that I don't think for Donald Trump South Africa or Africa more generally is a priority. This is just not a part of the world in which he's particularly engaged or about which he particularly cares. And as you know, he's described other parts of the continent in scatological terms over the course of his first term in the White House. Joe Biden, by contrast, a much more traditional American politician in foreign policy terms. I think you'd be more likely to see more attention paid to sub-Saharan Africa and South Africa specifically under a Biden presidency. But of course, more attention being paid to the country doesn't necessarily mean a good thing for the US-South African relationship. So, look, it's not a priority right now. The relationship has survived 4 years of Donald Trump. Where does it go in a second Trump term? As with everything in Donald Trump's presidency, that's very unpredictable.
Simon Marks, live for us in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much indeed.